thank you so much, Richard, for taking time to do our Speaking Truth to Youth video. I appreciate it. I have a few questions I want to ask you. The first one is, so what in your youth caused you to become an activist? And I realize some people don't even think of themselves as activists.
Activist is a big word, right? But
Right.
there's all levels of what activism means and the ways that we do it. So for me, I mean, basically being a queer youth, a queer kid, and also being an immigrant and a Latino was sort of just built in. I knew there was a sense of injustice in the world that I would need to do something in some ways. First of all, very selfishly, right? Just to be able to live the life that I needed to live and wanted to live. So I think that was just from a very, very early age. Yeah, we say youth, but really that was started at like 7. There is something that I was going to be called to do. Definitely that was part of what motivated me and still motivates me today. So I'm 56. So back in the day, there wasn't really coming out in high school or anything like that. It was just not even really a possibility. So I wouldn't say I had outright sort of support, nor would I have sought it out because, again, it just wasn't the time. I will say, in terms of being an immigrant and being Latino, that luckily I grew up in Miami, and so there's a large community where we're all sort of on the same page, so to speak, in the sense of like who trying to understand who we were in this world, what we needed to be as immigrants, what were the injustices of that. And so, in a way, I'm glad that I grew up with a very supporting community. As I was raised by a village, as the cliche goes, and I do feel sometimes for people that are more isolated, right, that's not always the case. So I think there was support there.
Can you think of a specific time when you found your voice or spoke up about something?
So I will say one thing. I mean, again, I think I was always in maybe I always looked up to Martin Luther King for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always felt at a young age that there was something that I was going to need to do in my life, and certainly listening to his speech, "If I Have a Dream," I remember as a kid like going, "What? This is amazing!" Right? And of course, it's so universal. It's not just about race; it's about every kind of injustice, right? And then later on in life, much later as an adult, a young adult, I got involved in Save Dade, which was an organization here in Miami-Dade County that was working towards many things, but one of them was very basic, like equality in housing, passing an ordinance so that you can discriminate against sexual orientation. And for them, it was the first time I really felt like an activist. I started writing newspaper articles and interviewing community members and sort of spreading the word and campaigning with them. So that was the first time where I felt like really active. And then of course from then I think my writing itself became a way of being an activist. Like telling my story is activism, right? Being witness to yourself for others is important. I always like to say I'm like horrible with picket signs. I'm not that kind of activist, but what I do is through my work and also lending my voice to many organizations and nonprofits and whatnot that know how to fight a better fight than I can on that front. In that way, I align myself with them, but also I know they know how to do that better than I do. So I support them in a way.
Given the times we're in right now, and especially right now, what continues to guide you, to give you hope, to give you courage?
I think the fight itself, recognizing that things maybe come in waves, and I've seen waves already in my lifetime. I guess hope and hope, that's part of it. I think also, something that goes back to my childhood. I think also, as I always like to say, that people like my mother, like my parents, are more American than I could ever be, because of their faith in this country and the sacrifices that they made and all the hard work that they put in to have a better life for myself. They really bought the American dream and made good on it. And so I always look to them to whenever I'm feeling like things are hopeless or whenever I'm feeling like that's it, this is the end. I always think about their eternal optimism about the values and the promises of this country. And I think a lot of immigrants do that. We're more patriotic than maybe someone who was just born here and takes all these liberties for granted, or is blind to the possibility of those rights are just being taken away, or those injustices coming a reality, as my parents have witnessed in their country, in their home country. I think it's just comparatively speaking to the hardships that they had to go through for when leaving Cuba, and the demise that they saw of that country, like within a couple of years, right? So, or the changes that were so radical. So, America has been a beacon of democracy to the entire world. So I think that just kept them steady. I'm glad to report my mother, my mother has, as Cubans tend to vote more conservatively, and they're really just kind of one issue voters about Cuba or whatnot. But my mother is also right now she just sees the same parallels of what happened in Cuba. And so she's actually shifted parties and even voted for Hillary Clinton. What a Democrat and for a woman. She's 87 years old. So like that's pretty wild.
So, what advice do you have for young people?
Well, I work a lot with youth as a professor at FIU, and so I've gotten to know their psyches a little bit better. I'd like to say maybe what I think part of the perhaps paralyzing issue is that there's so much going on, right? There's so much information at their fingertips. There's so much, obviously, on social media, et cetera, and instantly sort of awareness about everything, and it's taken a toll on their mental health. As I've seen it, and also I guess it leads to a paralyzation in sense of like I have no agency. The world is too big. I would say take it one slice at a time. Pick something finite. Do something like as finite as writing publics, right? That you do have agency, and that every generation has their moment in history, right? And so take it on. This is yours. You do have power, and also think about the ways in which your generation uniquely can affect things. I mean, there's social media whizzes, they're like they can have all sorts. Use those things not just to distract yourself or whatnot, but use those same tools that may be overwhelming you to do good, to act out with through them. I would say that, and also I think read history. It's important for people to realize, hey, 1968 wasn't such a great year either. I think that brings hope too, right? That realize that there's cycles to things, and see what other people did, how they did it, and how those issues are still relevant in many cases, and what can be done.
Related to your work with young people and my work with Americans Who Tell the Truth, do you see young people seeking truth or trying to discern what's true and what's not true, especially given all the social media influence and everything?
Yeah, I think, and maybe this is part of my advice as well, especially in the classes I teach, which are creative writing courses. I think at first what they're seeking is just to understand their own story and understand that they have a right to tell their story and that telling their story is empowering. And I think that's what I see as at least at the age group that I teach. That's what I see as a foundation for them going on and realizing or thinking about those same truths, how they apply in the larger world. And so definitely I see that happening as a first step. I do believe they are genuinely concerned and inquisitive and thinking about the world. I think there's a sense of paralyzation. And so I think if you understand your story and are able to tell your story, you can be empowered to sort of think about the broader implications of so many people like you that are on the same boat, so to speak.
How are you building or not building AI and ChatGPT and all of those writing tools into your teaching?
So it's not something I'm too worried about because I'm doing really creative work. So then it's poetry. So I should be more worried about it. But I feel at this point, if you're using ChatGPT, I don't grade the poems. So like if you
Right.
choose to get ChatGPT to write a poem, well, like you're cheating yourself. Most students come to these classes because they really want to create and do something original and express something, right? And no matter AI is not, I've used AI like write a poem in the voice of Richard Blanco, blah, blah, blah. And it's really hilarious when it spits out. I don't worry about it too much. We have been tutored a bit as far as literature classes and those kinds of where there's writing papers and whatnot. and they've advised us to use it as a tool, and not
Right.
to sort of ignore it or absolutely forbid it, because they're going to use it, but use it as a tool. Like go ahead and draft your paper, put it into ChatGPT and learn how you can write better, learn what that, how that's different. And so walking them through it as a tool, sort of a kind of grammar and spell check on steroids.
Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate your taking time and been a great conversation. Now I'm going to see if I can ask ChatGPT to write a poem in the voice of Richard Blanco.